I like what the 17th century philosopher Blaise Pascal said. He says, "In faith, there is enough light for those who want to believe and enough shadows to blind those who don't. If you want to believe, you'll find it. If you don't want to believe, you'll find that too." How much evidence does it take to believe his words? How many miracles? How many lives changed? You see, we live in this culture that values skepticism. We're so worried about being labeled as gullible. And so the only kind of faith that is acceptable in modern society is faith in oneself. If I had to guess, the majority of Americans would claim some sort of kind of agnosticism or self-made religion or kind of a blending of Christianity with whatever else they want to believe. And the reason for this is the only person they really trust is themselves. I don't really know if I can trust the pastor. I don't know if I can trust this institution. I don't know if I can trust this book. I don't know if I can trust this religion. But I trust myself. But they never stop to consider why. Why should you trust yourself as an expert on eternity? Why should you trust your own self in your own minds and authority? I'm not saying turn your brain off. I'm not saying be gullible, believe whatever you're told. I just want to say if you're going to be skeptical about everybody else in the world, maybe give that same skepticism to your own mind. Isn't that fair? You see, atheists often accuse Christians, you just want God to be real so you can cope with your life. But brothers and sisters, that argument cuts both ways. You want God not to be real so you can cope with your life, right? You see, yeah, believing in God gives me a meaning of life and purpose and hope after death, but not believing in God, that means I can live life however I want. Nobody can tell me what to do. I don't have to feel shame. I don't have to feel guilt. I don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. You see, being God, whether God's real or not real, it helps all of us cope with the life we want to live. Tim Keller points this out. There's numerous reasons someone might want God to be real or not want God to be real. You think I'm lying? Look at what atheist philosopher Thomas Nagel had said. He said this, "I want atheism to be true." He says, "I'm made uneasy by the fact that some of the most intelligent and well-informed people I know are religious believers. It isn't just that I don't believe in God, and naturally I hope I'm right. I hope there is no God. I don't want there to be a God. I don't want the universe to be like that. My guess is that this cosmic authority problem that I have is not a rare condition, and it is responsible for much of the scientism and reductionism of our time. One of the tendencies it supports is the ludicrous overuse of evolutionary biology to explain everything about human life." Remember, this is coming from an atheist. He says, the way that we use this to explain everything is just totally ridiculous. It cannot be true. This is a ridiculous situation. It's just as irrational to be influenced in one's belief by the hope that God does not exist as by the hope that God does exist. You see what he's saying? He's saying all of us are influenced by what we want to be true and what we do not want to be true. And that's not just true for believers, it's also true for atheists. Even a British atheistic philosopher said this. Aldous Huxley said this, "The philosopher who finds no meaning in the world is not concerned exclusively with the problem of pure metaphysics, reality. He's also concerned to prove that there is no valid reason why he should not live the way he wants to live. I must admit for myself, the philosophy of meaninglessness was essentially an instrument of liberation from a certain system of morality. I objected to the morality because it interfered with my sexual freedom." Brothers and sisters, when I listen to these deconversion stories, on YouTube from evangelical, I used to be an evangelical Christian and now I'm not. They all speak of this freedom they experience. They say, I used to be so guilted in Christianity and now I'm free. I no longer worry about that guilt and that shame. I can do whatever I want now. What are they saying? They're saying I found freedom from the moral law by getting rid of the lawgiver. And they're telling the truth. I believe them. Yeah, you're not going to feel guilty if you no longer believe that God has a moral standard of right and wrong. Now they can support LGBTQ and the world's philosophies, and no one's going to tell them they're a bigot. No one's going to say that they're backward. They can be called champions of women's rights in our culture, fighting for sexual freedom, abortion on demand. You can embrace naturalistic philosophy, and you can trade away all these superstitions of primitive mankind. You can make up your own moral code of what's right and wrong. Of course you're going to find freedom there. But don't you believe for 1 second they are just objectively rationally putting aside all their cards and pursuing the truth. They are not. They are motivated by the benefits of non-belief, and therefore they dismiss the evidence for God. Medically documented miracles, prophecies, the complexity of the natural world, the uniqueness of Jesus Christ. I'm not trying to throw shade at them. I know every story is different for these people. But when you watch these testimonies, remember, you only see what they want you to see. Sin is pleasurable for a season, and the freedom it gives you is real, but it's temporary. The Bible tells us you're going to be a slave of one of two things. You're going to either be a slave of righteousness to God or a slave to sin. You see, what they don't talk about is this. I gotten to talk with some of these people behind the scenes. I've seen some of their lives behind the scenes. They don't talk about the divorce. They don't talk about the relationship with their children. They don't talk about alcoholism, the addictions, the mental health struggles, and the self-centeredness. Christian, if you're going to be skeptical about everyone else, be skeptical also about yourself.